Were they bad?
Yeah.
I didn't know
My
that.
tea bed, they were okay, but I was on a path of them getting worse and so if I do it now, then I'll have that later. But yeah, they were, okay, I went to the orthodontist yesterday.
John will be joining us.
I hope so. I don't know why not. But of course, I don't know everybody's
Should I pick up the county beacon?
Yeah.
The
guy that lives the
With the
closest.
county signal up on like a bat signal.
Yeah. You get that in capital all the way, right?
It's early, I don't know why people want to get up this early.
She's been there a while.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's funny when Jim first came here, I'm like, oh, why the banjo? He's like, well, it's a tower. I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
got
I
Got it.
I'll never see that the same again.
Right, ever.
You're still going. It's like John Show.
He might come flying in here.
You never know.
But I'm starting
Flying
at
in
8.
here.
We're starting at 8,
Sorry.
done by 9. Maybe not today.
Okay.
We're a friendly group, so we're not.
Yeah, you have a quorum.
Yeah.
I went this way, and then the bottoms, you can't see, but all my bottom ones were in the crowd.
All right, we'll bring this Aviation Committee meeting to order on October 4th, 8 a.m. Thank you all for coming. Our County Executive, John Damel, is here joining us, so welcome, John. All right, first item, approve minutes of September 6th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Anybody have any changes, discussion, corrections? All those in favor?
Hi.
I'm gonna excuse John Hens, he might show up, but for now, I'll just excuse him. Number 2, public comment on agenda items or any item under the jurisdiction of this committee. Anybody in the audience have something they'd like to speak at this time? Or you're welcome to speak on anything that comes up in
Chairman? I motioned and voted, and I was not here at that meeting.
Right.
So I would like to abstain, and then maybe somebody else would like to motion.
Okay, let's back up.
I just thought about that because
Yeah,
I was gone, yeah.
Okay, let's get another motion for approving the minutes of September 6th. Second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
And one abstention.
One abstention.
Okay, thank you. Number 3, Director's Report. Item 8, fiscal year 2024 draft budget overview. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. You should have all received, I think, on Monday, the draft 2024 budget after John's executive review phase and all of his budget deliberations have concluded. So this would be the draft budget section for the airport that will be going to the county board for consideration end of the month, early in November, budget deliberations. 30th. Yep. So I'll run through, I won't go through everything in great detail, but I'll kind of hit some of the high points. So on the very first page is an overview of the department. A little bit different look to it this year with some initiatives that the county is going to, trying to change to a priority-based budgeting model in the future here. But Outlining on the first page our programs, so basically our major cost centers and revenue centers for the airport, and some other breakout programs that hadn't previously been identified. Some of those are our land leasing program, snow removal efforts, county board and committee support, and a couple others. So air venture preparations broke out separately, those sorts of things. So there's a few changes there. Typically speaking, we had our accomplishments and goals in this section of the budget. That is sort of rewritten a little bit in the second section on the first page. I'm talking about accomplishments. This year, one of the major accomplishments would be the T-hangar project, county-owned hangars being completed, which definitely boosts our revenue side for 2024 and beyond, and discussing hosting one of the busiest air venture events on record, if not the busiest, for the airport. Looking into 2024, a couple of key items. We have increased our revenue primarily due to the new T-hangars opening here next month. We already had budgeted a small portion of revenue in 2023, anticipating them being open in this time frame, but now we have a full year's revenue for 2024 budgeted, since they'll be open for the full time of the year. One of the increased capital expense items is to replace, I'll get into some more detail on any questions you might have. Replacing a skid steer. We have a 1981 Bobcat skid steer that definitely has its shortcomings and definitely is showing its age, really limiting its usefulness. So we're looking to replace that, and also one of our fleet vehicles as well. With that increase, we're also decreasing our line item expense for capital equipment, which would be, or capital improvements, excuse me, which was 2023 budgeted for the chiller replacement and the control tower. I'll talk about that later. And then one other increase and major decrease is a project that we're looking to do to replace some of the floors in our A and B T-hangar units on the north side. They're built in the 70s era with asphalt floors, and some of them haven't held up so well after now being 50 years old plus. And so we're looking at, Jason has been going through those, identifying the ones that either need a repair or a complete replacement, and looking to do that in-house, primarily through the county highway department. And then also we're anticipating offsetting that project by grant revenue through the Wisconsin Bureau of Aeronautics. So ultimately, at the high level, our levy is projected to stay flat. We did have an increase of $102,943, kind of the difference between operating expenses and revenues. The proposal from the county executive is to use airport fund balance to balance our budget instead of looking for additional levy. So that proposal will be $102,943 taken from fund balance. Checking with finance, our projected year-end fund balance is at $711,614. So that reduction would be taking that down to about $608,000. Page 2, department staffing has stayed the same. We have 9 full-time employees, 3 seasonal workers, and then 1 intern. County levy, again, staying flat, as I mentioned before, at $722,526 for our operating budget. There's a couple of graphs there on the changes in levy and operating budget from the last few years. Page 3, I'll spend probably a little bit more time on this section. The $57,000, number one increase from the revenue side would be the funding that we've been allocated through, don't ask me to spell out this acronym completely, but it's CRRSA funding. We got it allocated about a year and a half, 2 years ago. We have $57,000 there to use through the CRRSA federal legislation that was allocated specifically to the airport, through the Bureau of Aeronautics. That's where we're anticipating that revenue coming in to utilize to offset that hangar project. Skipping down one more column, we've got building rental airport. Again, that's primarily increased by the T-hangar project. We're up about $67,000 in building rent year over year as far as budget is concerned. Labor, certainly one of note that through the countywide wage study and the implementation of that, that was passed by the county board here recently. Our labor has gone up quite a bit more significantly than in most years. So we had a labor increase of $87,600 due to that, with some adjustments on the reslotting primarily of existing employees. Capital improvements, again, we're decreasing that as far as the chiller replacement goes in the tower. That is an ongoing project, which I'll talk about later in my report. Capital equipment, again, Bobcat, in 1981 Bobcat, we're looking to replace, and 03 Ford Expedition, which would be the deputy director's vehicle. Looked at a couple of years at replacing that, and we actually had it in the CIP for 2024. And we're kind of going back and forth on that, whether it needed to be in the CIP or within the operating budget under capital outlay. John had suggested that we just put it in this year's budget for capital outlay, and so we're looking to get that. Either way, we're trying to get that vehicle replaced next year. And so now pulling that into the actual operating budget. Skipping down 2 more columns, we've got maintenance on buildings. That's the increase primarily anticipated for the flooring replacement in some of our A and B units. Excuse me. And then finally, the airport fund balance shown as a major significant change usage that I mentioned before to keep our levy flat. So a 2024 levy, of course, excluding debt service, is $722,526. The financial summary page outlines a lot of what I've already talked about. I won't really get into that too much, but if you have any questions, we can certainly come back to it. Then following that page, there are line item breakouts of all the major spending categories and revenue categories throughout the budget. Most of those have been hit on with the significant changes page. Certainly, if you have any questions about any individual line item, certainly love to answer those. So really going down to the end, the final page in the budget, draft budget for next year, it really kind of just outlines 2022, 23, and now the executive proposal for this year. In 22, our operating levy was $708,911, increased slightly in 23, and now being projected to stay flat as far as tax levy applied to our budget for 2024. Certainly happy to answer any specific questions that you have. That would be the overview of the 2024 proposed budget.
I have a lot of questions, and I know you'll have the answers, Mr. Dino. So I'll just jump in here. On that very first page, there was a statement made that we had.
On the very first page of the draft?
On the very first page where it says budget narrative. Revenue is up primarily due to the opening of our new T hangars on the east side of the field. These hangars opened with 100% occupancy rate in fall of 2023. They didn't open.
I think this budget
So
is intended to look
that
at.
verbiage is a little bit off.
Sure, I think a lot of times when we put together these budgets for 2024, if something is anticipated to be completed by the time the budget is adopted, we kind of write it in the sense that it has happened. We have 20 leases signed for the new hangars, so we anticipate them to be 100% occupied.
But they are not completed yet. They will be by 2024. But
Correct.
the revenue is kind of misleading because we aren't quite there yet. Okay. Then on the second page where we have our little nifty graphing, there's a statement. The levy for airport debt service for 2024 is $4,010,961, a decrease of $2,110,146, or 3.7% under 2023. This decrease is related to the 2022 Series A bond payment on the airport hangar project, which was $2,157,500, principal and $76,959.16. How can we be doing a bond payment on something that's still ongoing?
I can double check with finance on the actual project
Just the
associated with
statement
the
again
bond
is
payment,
off.
but it may be
There
associated
was-
with the terminal
The
project.
way the bond was set up, there was structured a big balloon payment up front. While we were trying to decrease
Because of
that.
our BOA funding?
And
or-
because the fund balance fund, or the policy that we had. So we're gonna spend it, let's go ahead and spend it down on this ahead of time to make sure that the interest in the long term was.
Because an average Joe would read this,
Yep.
it doesn't seem mathematically suitable.
That's the T hanger thing again.
Yeah, there's a big balloon payment up front
Okay, I
to
got
make
it.
it more sustainable long term.
Okay, and then I'll bring up the chiller project on page 3. We had 20,000 in our budget for the chiller.
7,000.
For 7,000. So we got funded from FAA for that. So if it's a line item in your budget for 2023, does it just disappear? Or can you know what I'm saying? So you had it budgeted, we didn't have to use it.
So I'll talk about
So
air
you'll
traffic
talk
control
about
tower
that in the
upgrades
future?
on
Okay.
item C. However, just the simple budgeting of the chiller project in 2023, we intended to, still do, encumber those funds, either an encumbrance or a carryover to 2024, because we're still working on the design phase of it. And I'll talk to the tower upgrades on item C.
Okay, so
But we
you're
wouldn't
not gonna
budget it again for
lose that
2024.
money.
We won't lose that
It
money.
can be regrouped.
Regroup or refunded because of the grant, correct?
Right.
So,
But the
I'll
air,
get into the
okay,
tower
okay.
upgrades
Because that's
on
how I
item
was
C.
thinking of it, I'm with you, I see
I don't
where you're
want-
going.
I don't want the airport to lose that.
It will either be encumbered this year and then spent in 2024, or requested to be carried over to 2024 because the project is ongoing with design right now.
So I'm not gonna ask you this question, and maybe I'll wait till budget time. But just a note that I saw here, fringe benefit, workers' compensation is up 433.7%. That's not good. If that's across the board in all of our budget, that's not good.
It should be 400 and some percent.
Where do you see it?
So I'm
I'm sorry.
on Winnebago County budget detail fringe benefits. Net change from prior year, 433.70%.
So just specifically the workers'
So,
comp line item.
Yeah, I think, doesn't that show up when a worker's comp claim actually gets filed?
Oh, I see.
I believe that's paying into the system for our workers' compensation program. I don't think that's anticipating an individual claim. But I want to say that there had been fund balance applied to the workers' comp line item, and maybe that's not being applied this year,
Oh,
annually.
well, that and you'll see in technology replacement, there are a couple other things too, that there's work being done in HR for these things. We want to make sure we're allocating that to departments to pay for those positions.
All departments are gonna see,
Correct.
it's kind of wacky.
And it's kind of how we want to get to when we look at programs or priority-based budgeting or program-based budgeting, you see where that is across the board. So if you see the list of programs on the first page, what I want to bring to you next time is a budget of those programs and their balances and how much it costs so that you can see, and then also what other departments, less departments really cross over to airport than other departments, you'll see that. So instead of seeing just rolled up labor numbers, you'll actually see where those labor are go to. So this would be one of those things that you would see in HR, what it costs us to facilitate the workman's comp. And our fund balance got a little bit low on that, so we are trying to balance that out again. We had a few claims.
So it's just so it's just an accounting difference. So I mean, you're just making another category, putting it in one group, HR, you're bringing it over here.
Right.
And it's affecting the budget here instead, but it's,
It's gonna affect all budgets.
so everybody across the board is
So we
gonna
can
be
see it as
having this particular section is gonna be in everybody's.
Right, it's
All
attempted
departments.
to tear down silos. I mean, you'll see the same thing with computer licensings, that went up. So when a department says, I want 3 new laptops and 3 new licensings for Microsoft, they're gonna get billed for that.
Okay, so instead of
coming out
IT, it's gonna
correct.
be under each individual,
Right.
okay,
But
Yeah.
then,
yeah, go ahead.
well, how is that work out? That's, I mean, that's a crazy, it is a crazy.
That, no, I'm gonna have to double check on that.
Yeah, 'cause that must be a mistake.
Well, I do
No,
know,
it's
that
probably
seems like
not a
that.
mistake if you're taking it from HR and you're individually putting in each person's department. I mean, that would,
It's already there.
but I mean, yeah, why would it be already 4,000 and the 20?
Yeah, that's gotta be a
But-
mistake.
Is it just,
Yeah, I'll double.
I think I hear 2 things, so if I
Yes.
can jump in.
Yeah.
I think one, I'm hearing that you're saying there was always some time over here in another department that was being spent on this program. And now you're saying we're gonna lower that in the budget and distribute it
Right,
into
distribute it
the
over.
airport program.
right,
But you're also saying that we've underfunded this program. It's like, its margins are running tight. And so across the board, everybody's gonna see a little bit of increase anyway, because we don't want the program's margin running too thin. Is that, so there's kind of 2 effects, right?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
and I'll definitely look into that deeper before we're.
yeah, but
Yeah,
what
so-
Jeff was saying though, and I see what you're saying too, is that why would there have been any numbers in there at all prior to this if it was all done by HR?
We were simply charging just for the policy, if you would, but not the time it took for people to implement the policy.
Okay, I'm good now, all right.
And you'll see that across the
Okay.
board in the budget. I mean,
Well, that's good to know, because now
Right.
when I go into the budget meetings, I will understand that.
that was one of the lights that turned on with priority-based budgeting, that your cost is not just what you allocate to buy the brick. It's what it costed to engineer the program,
Yeah,
to lay it in, it's all your labor around it is the actual cost of the program.
okay.
So if that makes more sense.
Yes, and you're going to all the different committees to do this so that we don't have to rehash this at the budget time?
Yeah, but that 400% seems higher than normal, so I don't know if that's.
It can't take that much
Am I dreaming?
Right.
to run the insurance
No.
program.
Right.
But it's, when you see a percentage in that column,
I missed
Yep.
that.
you have to ask that question.
No, I'm
And so
I'm
now-
happy that you're here to explain
All
this,
the
because now I've
Wow.
got my light bulb. I'm just hoping that everybody gets the light bulb before we go into budget time.
I'll admit I'm not doing a great job explaining it, but Mike and Mark understand a lot more than I do.
I think it'd be great to hear that at the beginning of the budget and sort of what the wholeness of it looks like. So if you could look at the budget before last year and say, look at page this, and this is the line that's being distributed. I think that would also help clarify sort of where these increases, how these increases make sense, whether it's 400% or whatever it is.
Right.
We all figured it out now in 5 minutes, and that would be amazing if we could do that at a budget meeting.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're all 4 smarter than the average person though.
Well, we're the first one up in October to have our committee meeting.
Oh, come
Okay.
on, give us a little bit more credit.
Okay, I'm gonna let you explain the 130,000 for capital, because you'll be good at that for our skid steer and our truck, okay? So then, maintenance vehicles. Now I'm under repairs and maintenance, you got 47,000. Explain to me, and maybe Jason can explain this too. What kind of maintenance are we doing on our vehicles for 47,000? Is that just a guesstimate based on what we had before?
I think you can see
It's-
in
it's-
past years, it's been pretty stable.
Right.
As far as what the budget amount for that is. In fact, there's no change from last year to this year. As far as the percentage is concerned, I think we went up a total of $500, $46,500.
So it's anything
Excuse me,
and everything that
47,000 both
we,
years.
anything and everything that
We have a large fleet of vehicles. We have a large fleet of airport snow removal equipment, mowing equipment.
Okay,
Pretty specialized
so
equipment.
we're
for that
fixing,
class.
we're fixing
Yeah.
most of it
The
in-house,
lion's share
like
is
we
done.
always
Yeah,
do.
and I can't tell you,
But it's
the last
everything I
time.
could possibly think of.
I can't tell you the last time a vehicle actually left the airport to get serviced.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we're doing
everything.
that, and that's a great thing for people to know.
Can I dovetail on that?
Yeah.
So I know we haven't replaced as many like lots of vehicles, in the last year, maybe we've replaced 2 or this budget the last. Does $47,000 like get you by and there's like more things you would do? Is it, you know, or kind of, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
In terms of the maintenance, it's repairing the things and keeping our fleet running, but it's not doing any more than that. I mean, it's not intended to replace a vehicle, so yeah, we have definitely an aging fleet with vehicles still from the late 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like, you know, if we bought 2 new vehicles in the last 18 months or whatever, I don't know, whenever things actually come through, like those 2 new vehicles should reduce the overall maintenance. And I get that we wouldn't maybe decrease the overall maintenance budget because maybe other vehicles are getting into that like more costly age zone or, but I'm just trying to get a sense of like, you know, if it does just stay level at 47, are we sort of saying this is what we have to work with and we're gonna cobble things together and make it work? And then maybe this thing has a loose shifter knob and it's not the highest priority and we'll fix it next year if it gets there, or, you know, or are we running $47,000 in maintenance and saying clean bill of health for all of these machines?
Yeah, we're definitely not doing any cobbled repairs. Everything is done with high quality parts, you know, when we can find them. And it also breaks it up, which you don't see on there, under the fire department has its own separate maintenance section. So that fleet is carried by that budget item. And just basically keeping up with inflation, really.
So this isn't a critique of you, that's not what this is about. It's about that this airport has always fixed their vehicles in-house, and Joe Public needs to know we don't job it out, we do it right here, which is an asset for this company.
It is,
that we have the staff to do that.
It has a lot to do with the current mechanic that we have on our staff, which is pretty invaluable.
Yes, so I'm good with that. Then we have the illustrious stormwater. So we never know where that's going, do we, Jim? They can tell us that it's gonna go up.
It's been pretty consistent between 6 and 7%
Right.
in my time
And
here,
that's
so that's what we're
always been a
projecting again.
bugaboo for this airport, so I'm not gonna say
It's a big cost to absorb.
It's a big cost.
Where do you see that?
Okay, janitorial services, bam, 24 grand. Is that what we pay a contractor? I hope there's other things, to clean this facility, because facilities can't hire people to do it. So a lot of departments were doing their own contracting. So is that everything and anything that we buy also?
It's a few things. The bulk of the expense is the contract to clean this facility. We did try to have that done in-house multiple times over the last few years, and the answer's always been that the facilities department doesn't have the custodians to do it, to properly get this facility clean
Right.
on any kind of routine basis. So that being said, we looked a couple of years ago at contracting that out, and we are continuing to do that. We're pretty happy with the service. It's certainly nice to have a contractor here 3 times a week doing a variety of cleaning tasks in the building. We've got that all spelled out in our contract. But it's not just the cleaning of the facility. It is the mat replacements in the terminal building, I believe over at the shop as well. And then I believe that also the lumping that in janitorial service also includes the uniform cleaning, the UniFirst, and those sorts of costs. So I want to shoot from the hip. I want to say the contract we're estimating for janitorial this year in this building is somewhere around 18,000. So
Just asking.
about 6,000 is other expenses.
Okay. Property liability insurance, 38,571. So is that a number, this is for you, is that a number that each department gets for their share of property liability insurance? So you divvy it up between all of them? Okay. Depreciation expense, is that on this building?
It is on all of our fixed assets,
All of
so
Okay.
there's, a
But
large
the
amount.
building is, this new building is.
The building and, the terminal building would be the largest amount of that depreciation expense, kind of going along with the bond payments on the debt. A lot of depreciation happens upfront. A larger amount of it.
And do we have a sense then of like, in 2025, does that return back to, a more historic 1.5-ish number, or does that stay in that higher range for a while?
No, I think it eventually levels back out to a more historical range over time.
Yeah, I mean, we built this, we're building the T hangers as well. Again, it's just a way to make sure that we're, getting more toward a whole county budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious what that tail looks like for the depreciation. I understand with the debt payment, we pay a ton right up front because it saves a lot of money. But I'm just asking is that if you know, and if you don't, that's fine.
And sometimes we don't. That's one thing that Paul's looking into, he's diving into. We still have some sirens of the tornado sirens that have depreciation value on them. We haven't put one up in 20 years. So things have not been done uniformly in the past, and that's one of his biggest frustrations is how to make this all fit together.
Okay.
An example would be Parkview. After 10 years, Parkview was depreciated out from that building of it, okay?
Faster than a tornado siren, right?
Faster than the tornado.
Yep.
Okay. So my take on this is it's a good budget, okay? And that there isn't a big levy increase for the taxpayers. That makes me happy. But I needed to ask these questions because I don't want any. Yeah, so we're the group that's going through this. So hopefully all the other committees will do the same. So when we get to budget, we aren't snagged up. But also, and this, you might not like this, but you might. So we can make amendments at budget time. Keep that in mind. So it's always for anything. So it's his budget coming in, and then it's our budget debating. So if there's something, which I can't imagine because I think everything is handled here, which I appreciate that. So I think we have a good budget for this year.
It's like a nice little wrap present. It's
Was
really
that the
nice.
draft budget book?
No, it's not, it's for me.
No, I
like, I was
mean, but
wondering about
it's
this. Seems like
nice.
it's
It was
small.
easy for me to read, and I thank you for that. I didn't mind reading this, so I hate doing this kind of stuff. This is like my least favorite part of the job, but it was easy for me, and I thank you for that, because your little explanations with this is gonna help me for tomorrow morning too, I'm assuming, with my personal finance meeting. So I thank you for this little
Sure.
like education.
I'm done with what I had, so appreciate
you.
you listening to me and asking.
And thank you for asking those questions, because
But
I
you
missed that, I missed
guys,
that workman's comp.
that workman's comp
Yeah.
still bothers me.
It does, and we're gonna
I
get
think there's
like
a
an
couple of-
email on that.
I've got a couple of IOUs for questions that you had, and that would be one of them.
Okay.
Okay, I got a couple questions. For the programs, where do things like the college, the NIFA convention and things like that, where do those fit into the programs?
So the NIFA convention this year, which
for
is,
assets, is that what you mean?
The programs.
The
Oh.
program.
so the NIFA convention this year was the first time we've ever done it. Next year it won't be here, it'll be in a different location, so we don't know.
But programs like that, like. 'cause
Programs like
You've talked
that.
about a number of things that you've tried to attract over the years and, and whatnot. So I'm just curious, which of these categories you see that type of stuff falling under?
Primarily grounds maintenance as far as the NIFA convention. We didn't have a whole lot of expense associated with that. I don't think it's big enough to warrant its own, like our venture is, to warrant its own program. But it is something with this budget, and I'll let John expound on that, that we're moving towards this program-based, priority-based budgeting model. So I think this is a hybrid this year, and next year expected to be a little bit more, maybe possibly more programs.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid point. As we continue, and I think Jim and his team are doing a good job to attract more of these events, then you separate an event program. EAA is large enough to be on its own. Everything else can follow into something else. And that really kind of came together as we were doing the priority-based budgeting thing. So going forward, those aren't set in stone, and we can create different programs to take a look at some of those things But I think you're right. I think eventually when we want to get more attractions into here, Pathways is one that may not be coming back, but maybe come back, or Pathfinders, yeah, Pathfinders.
Well, Jim ended up leaving with BAA, but as far as I know, I haven't heard that it's coming back.
Right.
But all those different things, I
Correct.
think, are things that we've talked about over the years. I think, I think it warrants being its own program in the sense that, like, these are things that are largely revenue generators for the county, and perhaps require a certain set of staff expertise to attract and support those things that I think would be nice for the county to see, especially as one of those potentially revenue generating places.
Highlight,
Right.
definitely.
Even if it's a small piece of the program, it's also very, very different in my view than like leasing land.
It helps to support the aviation industry that we have built, or you have built in particular. So highlight that in a specific. I agree with Cody.
And then I was wondering same question with economic development. Where do you see that falling under the programs?
That's another good question. It's one that we don't, like I said, we didn't get far enough along in the priority-based budgeting process this year to, I think, have a more elaborate list of programs, but that's a great one to point out.
And the other, and I understand that it's sort of a hybrid and not super consequential. I just think for consistency, one of the previous goals has always centered around the economic development, whatever the conditions are at the moment. I think it should still be a priority and maybe warrants either its own program or some more like revision of what either building lease programs or some of those things like really look like. So and I don't know the ins and outs if you see that as like parallel to renting hangars out or very different, but one way or the other, I think that would still be an important thing in the future to include.
I would to address that, I am working on right now to see if I can get Chris Fabian, who is the CEO and president of ResourceX, the priority-based budgeting company that we've had to bring in for this, to be at our budget hearing. So he's going to share time with me to kind of explain priority-based budgeting and what they've done across the country. I think that's a fantastic question to ask him, because he would know more. I agree with you. As far as economic development, we are very we're not hands-on in this county. I mean, that's frustration. We have a $3.5 million revolving loan fund and an IDB fund that hasn't been touched in 5 years. But yes, absolutely. EAA is hopefully a ground for us to attract people for the aviation business part. So
it's one of them. We're going to multiple different conventions targeted at that. And, as it stands now in our line item budget, airport promotions, the $25,000 line item that continues on for next year again. That is the number one place I would point you towards what actual cost we're expending on an annual, and that has fluctuated, but that's what our draft budget contains for next year. But then, breaking that out in a program, there's just, aside from that line item, there's staff time, there's a number of other resources we're expending in that category. So I think, again, this is a hybrid of getting towards that priority-based budgeting this year. That it's a great question. It's something we can look at bringing up in the following year.
Not to be forgotten as an important wheel in the hub out here.
Okay, what's the condition of the above ground components of those 1970s T hangars that are going to get new floors?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the last few years on those hangars themselves. We've coated the roofs to prevent any roof leaks. We've painted those buildings. We've seal coated and outside of the building itself. In 2019, we crack sealed and seal coated that apron. So we've put a lot of expenditure into keeping those having some good longevity to them. I think the structures themselves are conditioned. The doors and the door tracks, I think, are probably sometimes the ones that give us a little bit more issue. But again, the floors and a few of them are definitely past their useful life.
You'll get a more detailed description of that too. All the hangars are part of the facility condition assessment.
Okay.
So you'll see what shape they're all in. Two of the most distressed buildings we actually have in the county are on this property. One being, I believe, was hangar 7, is it, or no, it's I can't remember which one, and the other one is the fire station that we have. Right, so every single hangar was gone through that facilities condition assessment, so you'll get a full report on where they all are.
Has that's been done?
It is, yeah, it is, it should be a presentation to facilities soon, and then the county board.
Okay.
I'm hoping to get the prelim on that still yet today by Mike Elder.
So there's still maintenance, there's still like work that needs to be done on these 50-year-old buildings. I guess I'm just like curious if somebody can make an argument as to why we should continue to put more money into 50-year-old buildings when about a year ago we were telling the board we need to tear down 50-year-old buildings and be building new hangar capacity.
Well, the north side T hangars, we fully believe we can get another 10 to 20 years of life out of.
And how much more maintenance for those doors and things like that will need to go in over 10 to 20 years?
I couldn't tell you that offhand as far as a number. I think,
But it's gonna be
seal
like
coat-
another 40, 50.
Like the seal coating and the crack seal project was state funded through grant funding. The painting of 2 rows of those hangars last year was offset by grant funding. So we always are looking at ways to offset our expenses for maintenance and repair through whatever available grant funding through the state or the FAA that we can. The roof coatings, I think, would be the one major project in the last 5 years on those hangars that were internal to the county. But the revenue generating spaces, they can reconstruct, that we're talking about 40 units, 10 units apiece for buildings, the A, B, C, and D hangars. To reconstruct them today would be millions of dollars, and we do feel as though we've got some good longevity yet to get out of them, hence why we're continuing to improve them for their usability for the next 10 or 20 years. The hangars that were removed with the T hangar project, they were in some tough shape, but looking at that project as a whole, we had 5 units in an area now where we're going to get up to 27 hangar spaces, in the future 20 that we're building now, and some pad sites for leasing out and future hangar development. So it really is highest and best use of the land, and a lot of that was identified through the master plan. Right now we've got 40 units in a pretty confined area, which again would be probably $7-ish million to rebuild all of what's there.
So which hangars flood?
Well, the north side T hangars that we're talking about with this budget, just to keep it on budget, do not flood.
Oh, okay.
We have other ones. The G and the H have some drainage issues, certainly. That's one of the next areas for redevelopment.
I mean, I think to answer the budgetary question, one of the positions I asked for through the Spirit Fund, the 3-year project position on innovation analyst. Look at this. One of the requests we have in finance is a management analyst. We are one of the very few government agencies that doesn't have a management analyst. Take a look at this. When I referenced the book City on the Line, a good portion of that, if anybody read that, is the forestry, the urban forestry department in the city of Baltimore. So they thought it was cheaper for us to plant their own trees, right? And in the end, when they actually analyzed it, the trees that they were doing were being planted by people that didn't really know what they were doing, and the trees that died had to go out and replant them. So what was more expensive on the front end to have a company come in and actually plant the trees for them, they guaranteed the trees for 3 years. So if the trees died, they would go and replace it themselves. So the outcome was they actually got more trees that survived in the city of Baltimore for a less long-term cost. That is what we have not been doing in this county, what we have to be doing. Why do we still have a 2003 truck? How hard is that to maintain? Why do you have these fire trucks that are 60 years old? That's hard to maintain, and I think you do a great job for it. Jim, for example, one of the trucks that we have is required just for EAA. So instead of purchasing a new one for $1.5 million, he's like, it would be cheaper for us to just lease this for the 2 weeks it was for EAA or whatever you needed to do, right?
Well, We've looked into that, certainly.
We've
but,
looked into that.
Currently, we do have the fleet to support AirVenture, but we
Right.
are looking long-term on what we need to do.
Because one of them, a very expensive one to replace, is pricey, right? So would it be cheaper for us to just lease that when we need it, instead of buying one that we only need here for 14 days? Of course, that would be a lot less maintenance. Right. So, and these are great questions, Colby. These are what we have to look at countywide when we do some of these. Sometimes it costs us a lot more money in the long run to just keep maintaining things and putting bandages on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a big price tag to replace all of those, and it feels like there's also a drip that is going to ultimately end up in spending $7 million to build new ones at some point. So I'll leave that for now. Do you know when the last time the fund balance for the airport was increased?
I don't. That kind of fluctuates between sort of where it's at now and around $1 million. It is kind of that, I don't want to say rainy day fund, but that contingency fund if we had, something catastrophic where we had to dip into that, say it's there. So it really never gets above $1 million, but it has fluctuated the last few years.
I can't recall the last time it was added to, and I think for a long time it's been neutral. I think, we certainly do run big risks, like we talked last month about the mitigation with the ARF truck.
Yeah,
And I assume we probably paid some expenses up front on that, and I'm sure there's lots of other examples of why we want that. It gives me a little concern to reduce the reserve fund by about 17%, when looks like most of the costs are recurring ones. So we're going to be right back into this situation next year where we're starting off with somewhat of a structural deficit. And so that like the ability for that rainy day fund to be there with the way this budget is structured looks to me like it really isn't a rainy day fund as much as a way to dovetail for 5 years before we have to make drastic cuts, or actually less than that, because we know that next year wages are gonna go up. We know that next year we're gonna have to pay another $40,000 in stormwater. So we're maybe looking, maybe with the way this budget is structurally set up, we probably only have 4 years where that reserve fund is a reserve fund, and it's not even a rainy day fund at that point. It's just there to supplement a soft landing before we all of a sudden have to find $100,000 to cut out of this budget.
Just a sidestep on that. So we have departments who have slush funds. I'll call it a slush fund, whatever, rainy day slush, whatever. Isn't that great that you can balance their budget? And this is something that is always there. Parkview, okay? They've always got this. You will eventually, if you keep doing this, I give it 3 to 5 years. Eventually, you will run out of that. So then your departments who have this reserve fund don't have it anymore because you used it, and I mean you, plural, not you personally, have used it because it exists, but your other departments don't have that. So then it's a taxpayer issue, a general fund issue, and whether you're a bean counter or not a bean counter, the math comes out in 3 to 5 years, this county is gonna be in deep doo-doo, taking all this money to balance all these things. So then you end up, I'll mention it's a budget time too. You either gotta cut people or you gotta cut programs.
So
And it's a reality check. It's great we have this, but like Colby said, it hasn't been built up since I can't remember when we put anything in there. That's why I was asking where that money for the chiller ends up. It doesn't become part of his budget for this year. It doesn't just disappear. So we're all wise to that. We're all knowledgeable. Some of us less knowledgeable than others, but you can't keep robbing from your funds to balance, because we'll be in.
I'll be very intentional on that. My intention is to drain all those funds. So
That's what I thought you were gonna say.
Every department does have that, it's called the general fund. And when we're out of money, we are supposed to go to the board and ask if we can add more money. The fact that some of these departments, and it's no offense, that they have a general fund, it's not right for us to take money from the taxpayer's pocket and put it into a piggy bank just in case on a rainy day. It doesn't, number one, help us confront the brutal facts that we're facing. There are brutal facts that we are facing. Yes, we have to continue to pay people. The labor item went up because it had to, because we had to pay people so we could have good mechanics here, right? Because I want to make sure that we have the best people in place to run our airport. These are going to be brutal facts that we're going to be facing. Utilities are going up, we got to pay for that. Stormwater runoff is going up, we got to pay for that. Water's coming up, we got to pay for that. And we have, when I take $20 from a taxpayer and put into this fund because I might need it in 5 or 6 years where they need it today, it isn't right. Right? But at the same time, when we do have things and we believe in keeping an airport and we believe in keeping Parkview, and I believe we believe that still, hopefully we do, that we can say to the county board, okay, we need this money for this purpose, and that we believe it, because that's the job of the board supervisors, right? And the general fund should be that account for everyone. On an enterprise fund, that actually makes money. Solid waste is a little different story. You know, they do make their own money. That is not taxpayer money. So if they want to hold that because they're generating enough of tipping fees, that's a different story from me taking it out of your pocket or your pocket, and holding it for a future time. We have to confront the brutal facts eventually. And one of those brutal facts might be eventually looking at a sales tax. We had 108,000 people on this airfield on one day. 108,000, and as creepy as it is, Zen City can track and see where all those people shopped within our county. We could figure out what the sales tax would have been, and that sales tax could have paid to replace all our damn hangars. Pardon my language, I didn't mean the D word, so I get passionate sometimes, I'm sorry. But you're right, I mean, these are brutal facts that we have to look at. We need to make sure that we can save Parkview. It's not sustainable draining the fund, but we have to actually get to the fact of looking at. We need to make sure that we look at the fact of the fund here to make sure that we are supplementing that instead of taking money out of taxpayers' pockets for things that may happen in the future and pumping it into a fund. The county board should support the airport. The county board should support Parkview. But these separate funds, I believe we have 18 of them. Is not right. I think it takes the power away from the county board. At the end of the day, has that body as a whole has the authority to allocate funds as they see fit. I mean, same thing here. They'd have to allocate the use of your general fund, right? You can't just spend it. They can't come to this committee and say that we need X amount from this fund currently, right? You would have to pass it through the county board anyway. So to get an actual real vision of where we are sustainable, I think all of those, as many as we can, need to get back to the general fund where they belong, because every department should have that as an option. And that is why we need a strategic plan and a vision to know where we're going. And I just want to be honest, that's the direction I want to go. Because unless you confront the reality of it, we stick a decent amount of tax levy in the airport. But I believe in that. I mean, I believe in what it brings to our county. I believe in the impact that this airport has for the region on top of that. Let's not be hasty here, right? Outagamie County and Fond du Lac County and Calumet County and all these other counties benefit from this airport being here. So I mean, these are the future of where we need to get to on budgeting.
And a caveat is, good luck trying to close this airport, because all your FAA funding that has come to this airport has to be paid back. So keep that in mind.
Correct.
It's millions and millions and millions.
Yep.
So I don't want this airport closed. I think Kim has got a tight budget.
Yep.
I think it works. It's not a real burden on the taxpayers, but you can't keep paying Rob and Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
So you had a good question, and I just want to clarify that I agree with you. I see that it can't sustain itself from taking from that
And whether you intend to close these funds or not, the reality is like the approach to this is that the airport is really whatever, $840,000 tax levy, not the 700 and whatever.
Right.
And that's a different calibration than what's reflected in here and creates a really different long-term vision than I think what the budget is actually like clearly saying. So I think that's a real struggle for me to look at budgets that are setting us up to continue an explosion down the line where we're gonna like have to, these aren't small things, it's hatchet, it's gonna be a hatchet job in a couple of years when there's hundreds of thousands of dollars from, a relatively small airport budget that need to find trimming, so that's all the questions I have.
Did you wanna say?
I wanted to go in with something that he said, I understand where you're going at with that, because you're trying to tear down the silos.
Yeah.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
Yep.
It's extremely hard, because you have this committee, this airport, and we get it.
Yep.
Us, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 typically, we get it, we're 5 supervisors out of 36.
Yep.
I mean, we tried to get T-hangers that we knew was gonna bring in revenue.
Right.
And we have people, that they thought it was a crazy idea, and it's like, it brings in revenue. It's one of the few projects in our county that actually will bring in revenue and pay for itself.
First 10 years
So-
and how long?
Actually, we look back at that, it's the late 90s.
So my point is, not having that rainy day fund, I see where you're going with this. You're just basically though, taking away this rainy day fund, putting it into a bigger rainy day fund. And it's a little scary because we did have that opposition just for something that will actually generate revenue. So for me, I look at that and I think, great, we've got 36 supervisors. There's a handful of them that hate everything that goes on in the airport. And how are we going to survive with that? And it makes me a little nervous.
Well, it's the same thing, you need to tap them during budget time to use it anyway. I mean, you have to get that approved through budget time to use that anyways.
Right.
Right.
You do,
Right.
but showing that we have funds that were,
Earmarked.
Yeah, earmarked for this, it kind of takes away a little bit of the, hey, we've actually saved and have this, so you know what I mean? It's just a hard pill to swallow. I understand your point and where you're going, and I'm working with it in my head right now.
It is not pretty. We are not fiscally sustainable at the model we are going.
Right, and then you have some areas in our county, we're
Yes.
talking about 18 different silos, right?
Yep.
Or however many, and you have some that are in the red continuously. So that means that somewhere in the green, we do very well here, bringing in the EAA and all this other stuff. And all the efforts that Jim and his crew have worked on. And then you have areas that cannot sustain themselves. And you've mentioned that name too a couple of times since we've been
Yep.
here. So you have them that cannot sustain themselves. They're in the red continuously. I mean, millions in the red.
We are not in the green here, in the airport,
We're not in,
not even close to in the green.
From the operating budget,
Right.
yes, we're not.
Right.
From the economic impact that this airport generates for the region,
Right.
certainly are.
Which we don't tap into as a fiscal thing. We're one of 4 counties.
you're saying because of a sales tax. Okay, so what about in other ways of doing it? Because that is a bigger pill
Absolutely.
that I don't know if I could swallow.
Correct.
So then what are other ways, can we think outside? I mean,
And I want to keep this on the airport budget.
okay, I'm sorry,
But that's exactly it. I mean, for us to keep on, if you're looking at the airport itself, right, we wouldn't have had to bond for the T-hangers. We just paid for them outright. And then you want to talk about that being revenue? Absolutely, it's revenue, because every rent we get every month would just be straight income. It had been paid for, like that sales tax, we wouldn't have had a bond for it.
and then when we want something else, then we gotta raise it again, and then when we want something else, then we wanna raise it again.
I get that,
And I am not for that. I'm
I
very
understand that.
Fiscally conservative, that is not.
Same, and I struggled with it too. But when I talked to Jonathan Delagrave and Racine, and I talked to Paul Farrow and Waukesha, who are 2 other counties that don't have it, they're looking at it as well because they understand. They understand the bonding and everything else with interest rates going up. That could backfire on us real. We are lucky to have the debt ratio that we have. We are one of the lowest in the states, one of the absolute lowest in the states. And it's not something I'm proposing here today. I'm just saying that there are brutal facts coming, that we are not fiscally sustainable. And if we want to fight for the things that we love, which is our airport, that is not mandated for us to do, we're going to have to get creative and find ways to do it. That's why we're looking at programs, through every department. By using a fund balance to pretend that everything's good is not going to set us up. And the last thing I want is for us to get to the end and then have to bring out a hatchet. So let's look under the hood. Let's see where we're spending money. Let's see how it's allocated countywide through every department. And let's figure out how to balance it out, how to get it fiscally sustainable, how to make it continue as long as we can while keeping the tax burden.
So here's a caveat to all that. I don't want this airport to suffer.
Right.
Because another department, and I'm not gonna mention that department or those departments, you can't keep growing programs in other departments. And you know what I'm talking, I know you know.
Yeah.
You can't have 3 other departments over here in the airport included in that suffer because this grows over here, and we have to take the general fund to support those. And then this airport sits here, and there's other departments like this, but even Parkview's making money right now. Okay, so with a low census, you can't keep growing programs for certain things and have your other departments take the hit for it, okay? Or back charge this department and several others for staff that takes to do this. And I don't need to be an analyst to figure this out. This isn't gonna work. It is not long-term. So if your goal is to deplete the general fund, I get that, because there's board members that think that money should all go to balance the budget. Then when you run out of that money, and we're already decreasing it, I've seen in the last 3 years, we're pulling, it will be gone. And then that crazy 0.5 sales tax isn't gonna cover that either.
Right.
And so it's a fix like a Band-Aid, but it won't be permanent. And then you're gonna have to decide what's important. So that's why I'm an advocate of this airport. This is important to Winnebago County.
Right.
Taxpayers, visitors,
Right.
everything, okay? You know I'm adamant about this airport. So talking about their budget, it is a good budget. But to take 102, what will we take next year? Because we know that's there. So you mush it all together, some of the departments who are growing, and employee-wise, program-wise, will suck that dry.
That's the point I
And
was trying to make,
and the
that's,
point-
I'm like, and then
0.5
we're going to be like
0.5%
against each
sales
other,
tax
and that's what I get.
isn't gonna pull us out of anything.
Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to bring it back to the.
So we're back to
budget.
the.
I know we're getting into a lot
Right.
more broader issues, and I understand they do relate to the big picture of the county.
Yeah.
You have one question from the audience if you'd entertain it.
Okay,
I just have a comment. I think that the fund that you're talking about, that's the airport, was a couple of year windfall that we got from Oshkosh Truck when they were leasing all of the grounds for storing their trucks.
Correct.
And then when they didn't need that anymore, then that went away. So that was really was it about 2 years, 2.5 to 3 years, something like that, and that's where it came from.
Right.
That was that revenue that came in.
Yep.
correct.
And that's the point of an enterprise fund, to be able to be self-sustaining. Like, if you can make it, by all means, grow up to 3 million. Like, if you can figure out a way to get the revenue to grow it, by all means, do that.
But they don't need the space anymore because they've acquired some other land in their
Right.
house, so that's why it went away.
Thank you for,
It was
Thank
just
you for
a
telling us that, because I didn't realize.
one-time thing, basically,
Mhm.
over a short period of time.
And one other thing I do want to say on programs, because there's one program in particular that is still in this budget, and that was the internship that we put in there from last year. That brought a young professional in here from, where was she from? From Illinois, who came in and got to see how EAA works and how this airport works, and I think she was almost sad to leave. And that's another way of attraction. So, you know, that's a program we have to look at. Does it make sense for us to do that, for somebody to come in and help out with AirVenture and to try to attract young professionals to our area? And she fell in love with the city, and she fell in love with this airport. It was hard for her to go. I mean, you guys really had an impact on her. But again, you know, when you're talking about programs to make it work, these are things we have to do. Things we have to look at, think about deep and long and hard about, is this something we actually want to stick into?
it's in our budget for 2024 though.
Correct.
Yes.
And it's about 11, let's be honest, it's about $11,000, right? So I think the county benefited,
Sure.
or I don't know that it can sustain itself in the future, but I think that gal, she now has a job. She went out and she's not saying anything bad about this.
That's right. That's why it's still in there.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? I think we've hit it all. Okay, back to you, Jim.
Well, it's your meeting on,
Did you want to,
on the
you
budget.
said you were going to go on,
But 3B would be the next agenda item.
okay, but you don't want to talk anymore about your budget?
Not really.
I do want to say that I think Jim and the team put it together a really good budget. I think you do a fantastic job running this airport, and I think it's in good hands. I think the future of Whitman Field is long and enduring, and I think that the board will see that as well. I know you talked, there was hesitation, but they did eventually pass the TA project. There were some arguments, but it did get passed. Yep. So there's hope.
Think positive, that's it. Okay, thank you, John, for coming and clarifying some issues. All right, we're gonna move on to item B, East General Aviation Hangar Project update. Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. In your packet, there was included a photo from last week on the T-Hangar project. As you can see, all the asphalt paving is now complete. 99.8% of the civil project is complete. We identified a punch list of items for the civil work that the contractor has come back and finished most of. I think they'll be coming back later this week to finish the last remaining items. And now it really is just on the building contractor with Cardinal to complete the buildings. As you can see from the photo, the roof on the east building is now complete. That was kind of stalled out there for a few weeks while they're waiting on materials. Since this photo was taken, they've actually started building out the actual hangar doors on one of the buildings. They made really good progress there. So all the door frames had been installed and hung for several weeks now, but they've actually started building out the doors themselves. They're doing electrical wiring within the building, running piping for gas for the heating units, which are very close to being delivered. They're anticipating either sometime this week or early next, so that they can start hanging the heaters in each unit. And then they've got just quite a number of things to do interior-wise to get the project completed. We had gotten a completion date of November 30th from the contractor. Sometime in September, they mentioned that due to some project material delays and some other things. Now, actually, as of our meeting yesterday, they're anticipating November 17th as their completion date. Of course, that's not set in stone. There could be other delays that contribute to being a little bit past that, but we are hopeful, and we have been hopeful that mid-November would be a good target date once their materials, especially for the roof, finish coming in, because they're not really waiting on a whole lot else that they foresee any delay on as far as materials at this point. So that being said, we are looking probably middle of this month, after we are having progress meetings every 2 weeks now. Middle of this month, if it's still looking like November 17th, We'll get that communication out to the prospective tenants to try to give them a better idea of when they can occupy the facilities. But ultimately, our goal had been the first couple of weeks of October to be complete. Obviously, we're there now, and we're a few weeks behind that, about 6 weeks delayed. This day and age, it's really not that at all. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the T-hanger project, but of course, we do have 20 tenants who've signed leases and have been approved by the committee in order to get those full as soon as they're ready for occupancy, which we anticipate in plus or minus 6 weeks.
So I understand construction, I worry about the tenants, they want to move in, those are the sites, so this is good news that it's November 17th, because I think it's too hard, so. And materials and workers and all that shortage. Anybody else have anything?
Oh, one other item of note, and I mentioned this to the county clerk and John, I know I had heard from the county board on the hangar project. They were looking for some updates on that, so I have asked, I kind of want to, at this point now, wait until the project's complete and then give them a complete synopsis of how the project went and kind of give that whole picture. So I've asked that, it's kind of hard with budget time coming up to have a November timeframe meeting, but I did ask, I believe, for the December agenda, so hopefully that board chair is amenable to that, to give a presentation.
Okay. All right, let's go to item C, air traffic control tower project update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Kind of two things on this project, or actually two separate projects really. Back in April of this year, we were notified of a bill grant that we were awarded for improvements to the tower. That included originally the chiller replacement that we had already budgeted, or $70,000 with the county budget for this year. We had anticipated getting that into that bill grant. However, the timeline on executing the bill grant was very, very tight. The FAA needed opened bids completed by a date during the AirVenture Week, July 27th. We had inquired several times if that date was flexible. Came back with FAA several times that no, it's not. And so that being said, we went out, we had a number of things that we had to complete for the process for the state and the FAA in order to be eligible to actually utilize this grant. And so we put out for consultant selection in the June timeframe for design of the improvements, which included the chiller replacement. That proved to be too time intensive for any engineering firm to be able to meet that timeline of opening bids then in July. It was like late May, early June when we went out for selection. It just ended up being too tight. We had a couple of respondents saying, we can complete all the other work in your scope, but we cannot meet that timeline for the chiller replacement. So we did our due diligence there. Honestly, there's never been a tighter timeline that I'm aware of from award of grant to opening bids and awarding contract through the Wisconsin Bureau of Aeronautics, because we have some other statutory requirements to fulfill for them. So we went through it and got that process done as quickly as possible. Long story short, the bill grant is moving forward. We've been awarded, we've been officially received the signed grant from the FAA. And the contract was awarded to the low bidder, who was within our budget for the upgrades we're going to complete under the bill grant, which the big ones include an upgrade to the access control system and the software associated with that and some hardware. The installation of some CCTV cameras at the entrances and on one other location within the tower. The replacement of shades for the tower cab windows, because those are actually quite pricey. As far as those go, they're at their end of their useful life. Replacement of chairs in the tower cab and the phone system. And so we were able to get all those things done with the bill grant. Unfortunately, the chiller replacement wasn't able to fit within that time frame. So we have, of course, budgeted $70,000, excuse me, for that replacement this year. We worked through our facilities department on getting a firm that can complete the design work, which they are getting close to replace the chiller system. Facilities has suggested that we install basically a redundant system with an additional chiller unit in the event that one fails or goes down. That way we wouldn't be without air conditioning in the tower, especially in summer months and the AirVenture time frame when we're already having issues with the system that's there. We certainly don't want, whether it be AirVenture, which would be the biggest impact, or any other time in the summer, when we had, chiller issues getting 80, 90 degrees, the tower cap is not a different weather up there. So that said, we got a preliminary opinion of probable cost from the engineer to do what the facilities department, in a perfect world, would like to do in the tower for the replacement. And it's significantly higher than the $70,000 that was budgeted. The preliminary estimate was actually about $266,000. So we had a meeting with, it was surprising to everyone really involved, including the facilities department, which has a lot of experience in doing these type of projects. However, we met with facilities on Monday and asked for them to break out the costs. Instead of having a redundant system, what would it be just to replace essentially what we have now with replacing that R22 chiller that's in there? And they're going to come back with us with a couple more options of what we can do to at least get a replacement moving forward at a somewhat more palatable cost. Maybe there's an opportunity down the line to install a redundant system, but at this point, I don't think that's feasible. That being said, we're looking at, like the bill grant we got this past year for the tower upgrades, understanding that timeline didn't fit with our chiller replacement. We're looking at potential application for another bill grant for this upgrade. So we're not ruling that out at this point in time, but absent of that, we have some other funding we could apply towards it. We have our own ARPA funding that was allocated to airports across the nation that we have not spent yet. And we may look at utilizing some of that to apply to the overage on the chiller project. So we're looking at a couple of grant revenue streams that we could apply towards it. Or, of course, the alternative would be coming to the county board and asking for additional funding. We're trying to avoid doing that. And so more to come later on what our other options are for the chiller replacement. But it's something we can't really kick the can down the road. There will be a time when it'll fail catastrophically at the wrong time. And we're also looking at contingency plans for that, because the lead times on these chiller replacements are pretty lengthy. One of the ones the facilities is working on right now is going on a year between procuring the actual chiller and that actually arriving, and I forget which facility that's in. So we're looking at contingency plans for next summer, figuring that we probably won't have a chiller replacement by middle of next summer at this point. But rest assured, we'll have air conditioning one way or the other in the tower.
Question from the audience.
When we built the tower in '07, I suggested redundant systems for the chiller, and the FAA flatly said no. We have this design throughout the country, it works. So 20 years down the road almost, and we don't have a redundancy. To just replace that chiller now without some redundancy provisions is stupid. If you're in the EAA, that chiller craps out in need of a $20 component. It's not going to be pretty.
Thank you for that, Tom. What I would say is that the FAA funded 95% of the construction of the tower through federal funding, so it would have been their purview to say yes or no to that very question. We're not leaving it off the table. We're just looking at what are our other options to get this funded, at least in the short term, because the chiller that's operating there right now is using a refrigerant that is getting incredibly costly and being phased out by EPA. And so appreciate those comments, and we'll certainly keep that in mind going forward. We had some issues with the AC during our Venture Week this past year. It was very hot. Wednesday and Thursday of our Venture Week, our facilities department came out, got it fixed very quickly, I think within a matter of a couple hours, and restored back to where it needed to be. So our facilities department's been great at keeping it running and keeping it, anytime that we do have an issue with it, they're out here fairly quickly, depending on if it's during the weekday or weekend or whatever, to get it fixed. So.
Okay. Interesting. That's the end of that deal. 4, discuss and approve a hangar lease renewal between New View Technologies, Inc. and Winnebago County. Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is New View's annual lease renewal for hangar K821, which is on the north side.
As many of you know, Newview's been here at the airport for over 20 years leasing from us. They currently lease 3 county-owned hangars, and this is just one of them. It's a 50 by 50, 2,500 square foot hangar. This will be for November 1st of this year until October 31st of next year, and we'll be increasing their rent by 3%, which is what is stated in the lease that we will do each year when we do this renewal. So the rent will be going up to $855.67 per month. We request that you approve this airport hangar lease for K-21 between Newview Technologies Incorporated and Winnebago County.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions from you? Has been down here.
We still have a quorum.
Okay, yes, we still have a quorum. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, that's passed. All right, item 5, discuss and approve a hangar lease renewal between American Air LLC and Winnebago County. Cameron?
Thank you. American Air LLC leases hangar I-3, which is on an annual lease, just like that Newview lease. It is a 2,500 square foot hangar. This one has an office and a bathroom, hence the greater cost here. It's located on the north side of the airport. This will be November 1st through October 31st of next year, 1-year lease. The rent was increased by CPIU, which is what we do for all the I hangars. That's 3.4%. That brings the rent up to $1,206.35 per month. Request that you approve this airport hangar lease for I-3 between American Air LLC and Winnebago County.
Move to approve.
Motion is made and seconded to approve. Any questions from anybody? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Cameron. Item 6, operation and maintenance report, Jason.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We're just getting ready for winter, basically. We plan on having our annual winter snow meeting with our tenants probably at the end of this month. Our mechanics going through the snow equipment right now to make sure it's ready. We have the last round of mowing underway. Hopefully, once we make another loop around the airport, which takes about 3 weeks, then we'll be done for the year. Maintenance-wise, we're doing some concrete. We're doing a concrete project over by the I hangar we've had some water infiltration getting into the hangar there during snow melt, so we're going to make that easier to plow, so we can make sure that doesn't happen anymore. We have some crack sealing going on actually today at the Sonics hangar. And lastly, we hired one of our 2-year seasonal employees into the full-time position. So it's going to work out really well, I think.
He's got a great lineage of airport operation.
Yeah, he comes from
He doesn't come from a former
well,
employee here, does he?
yeah, I think he does, yep.
I think he does.
Okay.
Yeah, but he has definitely proven himself here as seasonal. He integrates and meshes well with the current crew that's here, which keeps up the morale. So that's good for employee retention.
Anybody have any questions, Jason? We grilled you before on the maintenance of vehicles. You answered those questions well, so I appreciate that. I see Jim had to leave, so unfortunately. Okay, Chairman's report, I had a couple of things. Under planning and zoning, the EAA Blue Sky Real Estate owns a parcel of land on the east and west side of Knapp Street, and they had a conditional use permit for the east side, which they fenced in and parked airplanes. So we went and reviewed that. There were no complaints from any neighbors out there on that project. It served well during EAA, and their conditional use permit will be renewed for another year. And we won't go back out as a planning committee to view it unless people complain. But they did everything they said they were gonna do and more, so just wanted to let you know that worked out well. And then, on a bright note, since Mr. Fred Stadler is sitting here, and those of you that had read the article in the Northwestern or in the Herald, we're lucky to have Fred here. He just was commended, I guess you'd say, for having 10,000 Young Eagle flights. So Fred, thank you for your dedication, and thank you for being on this airport and being a good member of EAA and attending our meetings at this airport. Thank you for all you do. And that's all I have under that. 9 is committee member statements, suggestions, items for future agenda. Anybody have anything at this time?
I got nothing.
No. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
just 2 announcements. We have a couple of great events coming up this weekend, just a couple announcements of that. Of course, I didn't know if Jim Busha was gonna mention this, but of course he'd leave. We have Space Day happening at the EAA Museum on Saturday from, I believe it's 10 to 5 or 9 to 5. And so there's a bunch of great events. I think it's geared towards younger folks with some of the things, some of the activities that I read about that are be happening. I'll be there with my 3-year-old, so he's over the moon like that. For that, so excited for that. And then Wings as Eagles, our tenant here on the north side off of 20th Avenue, they're having an open hangar day with a variety of activities as well, running about the same hours on Saturday. So 2 great tenants at the airport having public events that I encourage, if you know people that might be interested in either one of those, they're open to anybody, so.
Thank you for that. All right. Set next meeting date. I'm gonna think that we're not gonna meet on November 1st, because I think we're gonna be fully into our
Yeah.
budget.
I was wondering about that.
So I'm wondering, around November 8th?
Yep.
So I was gonna move it to November 8th and not November 1st. If that's okay with. All right.
That is,
I'm having a root canal that morning, but I'll make it.
oh,
Via Zoom?
seriously?
Via Zoom?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'll be in there, yeah, exactly. I'll be zooming in. No, I don't, I'm joking.
Hold up your placards and, okay, so we're gonna go for November 8th. Now I need a motion to adjourn. Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Thank you for your patience, it was a little long-winded, but
No, I was very
We had good
educational, and
Yeah.
I thank you.
we are adjourned.
Thank you for coming.
Oh,
Thank you.
no.
Absolutely.
What'd you do?
Oh, 5 weeks ago, I put a sock on wrong.